Hey guys, Miss White here, coming to you live from Michigan here. This is Unit 8, our last unit of the school year, the Civil War. I've been telling y'all all year that this was our most exciting unit, and wouldn't you know, we have to do it remotely. But anyway, bear with me, all right? The slideshow this week will start off with a brief recap, as they always do, about the antebellum era. Remember, the antebellum era was just when society slapped a band-aid on all the main issues. They addressed some pretty major ones, and some were successful, like the education reforms were successful, mental health, prison reforms, yay. However, they did not address the main issue of slavery, so of course, wouldn't you know, that's what leads to our Civil War here, all right? Our country is reaching a boiling point that 10 years before secession started. All right, we got the first thing that y'all are going to learn about this week is the Fugitive Slave Act. All right, this was terrible. It was controversial. As you can imagine, it has to do with slavery, which is not good, right? All right. Before the 1850, slaves could run away to any northern state and they would be considered free. Hooray, you made it. Hallelujah. However, shocking to hopefully none of you, the North didn't return many runaway slaves, right? Yes, they offered some pretty good bounty for it, $2,500. That was a lot of money back then. But still, a lot of people in the North were abolitionists. They didn't like slavery. I ain't returning your slave. They're real people. I'm not giving them back to you so they can go back to some terrible life. So screw you. So in 1850, we got something called the Fugitive Slave Act, making it a requirement that the Northerners had to return any runaway slaves. Otherwise, they would face a penalty by the federal government. So that means if you were a runaway slave after 1850, you had to make it all the way to Canada to be considered safe. And even then, not so much because slave owners sucked, right? But you had to make it all the way to Canada, all right? So it made it a lot harder for slaves to run away because that is a long way to go. But anything beats being in slavery, right? The other controversial thing that y'all are going to learn about this week is the Compromise of 1850. It consisted of 5 different parts. There it is. 5 different parts to it. All right. The main one that y'all need to know about is that it granted states popular sovereignty. What that means is states could decide whether they wanted to be a slave state or not. Sounds pretty simple, right? States should have the right to decide that and not the federal government because the states have to live with it every day, not the federal government. Makes sense. However, let me point you to a modern day example. Right now, during our pandemic, every single state has a different opinion on when states should reopen their economies. When should we start opening up malls and movie theaters and stores and bars and restaurants? When is the appropriate time to do this? The federal government isn't really telling us what to do. It's the state government that has to decide this, right? That's just how it goes. That's how it is in the Constitution. States have these rights to decide for themselves. However, look what it's turning into. No one knows exactly what the right answer is, what the wrong answer is. Georgia, just a few weeks ago, tried reopening up everything all at once, and the president himself had to go down to Georgia and say, dude, that is a terrible idea, reclose everything. And eventually, the governor of Georgia closed everything back down again. So it's just going to show you that, yes, states have the right to determine some of their own destinies, right? But certain things, it can turn controversial because not everyone's going to agree with it, right? Because now the president shut down Georgia because he was concerned, of course, for the safety of the people living in Georgia, but also he was afraid of the domino effect that it would cause, right? If Georgia were to reopen their economy, reopen all their businesses, bars, schools, restaurants, whatever, you name it, Trump was afraid that all the other states around it would do the same thing, thus creating a new surge in the coronavirus, right? Which is dangerous to not only the state level of Georgia, but also to the people of the United States in general. More specifically in the South, because Georgia is in the South. Duh, right? So anyway, back to that. Popular sovereignty, giving the states the right to decide what is best for their state is a good idea to an extent, but when it comes to issues like slavery or the issue of reopening an economy too soon and risking the lives of many, many people, that's when the federal government needs to step in. And that is why this was such a huge issue back in the day. And a lot of people ended up losing their lives over this before the Civil War even started. But stick with me. I will explain more in my future slides, in my future videos to you, because I don't want to keep these videos too long, all right?